Have you ever had to hold your nerve and just trust yourself when you knew that the odds were against you? My guest today has. He held his nerve, won an Olympic gold medal, and now runs a thriving small business. Time for a large dose of inspiration, team.
Welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their secrets to take your marketing to the next level. Now here's your host, Tim Reid.
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Australia's #1 marketing show. I'm your host, as usual, Timbo Reid, but you, so much more importantly, are a motivated business owner ready to crank out some great marketing. And that's what we do around here. And this show is very, very kindly brought to you by the good folk at Net Registry and 99 Designs. More tips from them later. Hey, big show today. I take you behind the scenes with me old mate Lukey of my most effective Facebook posts for the past 12 months. I have a fireside chat with speed skating sensation Steven Bradbury, who turned misfortune into an Olympic gold medal and then into a thriving small business. By the way, you're not going to believe the question I opened up the conversation with. I'm still scratching my head. Well, it was a bit of fun at the time, and he got a laugh out of it as well. Stay tuned for that one. Plus, I share a motivational marketing quote of the week that will remind you about the amazing opportunities that are out there for every single one of us business owners. As usual, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the Small Business Big Marketing headquarters. Let's get stuck right in.
Small Business Big Marketing with Tim Reid. smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.
As usual, I'd like to start with a bit of a check-in. See how your week's been. You had a good one? I sort of took the week off. I worked each day, but my beautiful wife at the last minute said, "What do you got on next week?" I've booked a holiday. Gotta love that. But it was okay. I could reschedule most things except a webinar I was doing with 99 Designs, which I was still able to do because it was a webinar. So we went away. We went down to Torquay, which is near Bells Beach. Happened to go to the Surf Classic down there as well, which is pretty cool. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we stayed at the RACV resort in Torquay. And boy, oh boy, what a wonderful experience. From a marketing point of view, yes, I had my marketing radar on. From a marketing point of view, that place has nailed consistency. And consistency is such an important component when you're trying to build trust and familiarity and trying to get people to buy from you. The RAC resort, is that the right word? The RACV resort had a wonderful interior design, customer service, the staff uniforms, even, and I love this, the music that they played throughout the resort, it was just right on brand. They'd just done a lot of work in understanding what their brand was all about, and every single touch point that made up your experience at the resort was on brand. It sounds complicated, but it's incredibly simple, this concept of consistency. I talk about it a lot in a masterclass I ran a few years ago, the recordings of which are in the Small Business Big Marketing Forum. But RAC Resort Torquay, you nailed it. While we were down there, we went to Bells Beach. More marketing gold down there. So Bells Beach, surfing mecca, one of the surfing meccas of the world. And the Bells Classic was on, which is one of the major surfing competitions of the world. I happened to meet Mick Fanning, who won it. That was exciting, #1 surfer in the world. But I got to tell you, Jeep, you nailed the integration at the Bells Classic. It was fantastic the way Jeep just kind of slowly got under your skin wherever you went around the competition. Give you some examples. They had the Jeep Chill Out Lounge. That was just a cool little on-site van where you could go and chill out. They had lounges, air conditioning, TV to watch the Classic if you didn't want to go down the beach and watch it. That's a first world problem. They had a sand-covered Jeep on display, which looked just incredibly cool. Looked like it had been made out of sand, but it was actually a real Jeep that was just plastered all over with sand, so you couldn't see one bit of it. But such a fantastic sort of point-of-sale display, I suppose, if you like. And you couldn't help but take a photo and send it out on Facebook or Twitter. It was incredibly shareable. That is word of mouth right there. And they had Jeeps, and I'm sure this was product placement, but they had Jeeps placed throughout the car park at Bells Beach. And I wouldn't say every second car, but, there were a lot of Jeeps in the car park, and I don't think that was a coincidence. One other thing I did this week, I had a meetup for the Small Business Big Marketing Tribe in Melbourne, which was a lot of fun. So a big thank you to everyone who came along to that. It was great. Such an eclectic mix of small business owners. And thanks, Ben, from Geelong. You're a legend, mate. Thank you. I know you love being mentioned, so you organised that meetup. So a big well done to you, buddy. So that's my week. I hope you have had a cracker as well. Righto, listeners, time for a little blogging/Facebook case study with my old mate Lukey. Lukey, are you there?
I am, Timbo. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, mate. I'm excited to... I'm not that excited about numbers. You know me. I'm a much more an emotional marketer, but I know you get excited by a little bit of marketing analysis.
Yes, you prefer to let me look at the numbers from time to time, Timbo.
I do. Now, Lukey, we've been working on boosting Small Business Big Marketing's Facebook coverage and traffic to websites. So last week, I wrote a very innocent blog post. The headline is 7 graphic design fails, and then in brackets, number 6 will have you scratching your head, ! And then I basically found 7 examples of poor graphic design from around the internet and presented them in the blog post with a 1-sentence comment for each example. The first example, the visual, it was an image of a pencil put together by an anti-drug organisation. And on the pencil, when it's at full length, it says, "Too cool to do drugs." But as you sharpen the pencil down, you get "cool to do drugs." And then as you sharpen it more, it says, "Do drugs." And then when the pencil's sharpened right down, it says, "drugs." So therein lies a graphic design fail. And then there was another 6 examples of funny graphic design examples. So I wrote that blog post. I then grabbed it and put it across over on the Small Business Big Marketing's Facebook page. And it started to get a little bit of traction, didn't it, Lukey?
Yes, it did, Timbo. So yeah, I've been keeping an eye on the Facebook page, and I've noticed that most of the content that you put out there will get some likes. I suppose some of the recent posts you put up there have got sort of around the 200 reach mark, which means 200 people have actually seen it, and then anywhere from a couple of likes to 10 or 20 likes. But I'd noticed that this particular post that you put up there had certainly got much more engagement, or at least reasonably significantly more than the other recent posts. So I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity. That's usually an indication that you're hitting the mark with the content. The people who like your page already, and you've got about 4,500 likes. So the people that like your page already, some of them have started to see the content and have liked it. And that's sort of when Facebook says, "Oh, this obviously is good content. We're going to start showing it to more people who like your Facebook page." And that's when it starts to get engagement, I suppose, for want of a better word, virality.
Virality. It develops a life of its own, doesn't it, Luke?
Write that one down.
Yeah, that's right.
So I decided with your Facebook ads account, Timbo, that we'd throw
some dough in it, mate. Throw some dough in it.
So,
$20? $20?
The massive budget of $20 that you gave me, I actually went over that and spent 25.
Oh,
sorry,
Luke. That's 25% over budget, mate. What are you doing? I don't remember getting that email. Righto. So we've boosted the post.
So we boosted the post. Now, this is the important part because in Facebook's native interface, there's a big button. If you're a Facebook page owner, you'll notice there's a big button that says Boost Post. Now, that's quite a scattergun approach of boosting a post. Facebook will try to find like-minded people, but there is a bit of way. I don't want to get obviously stuck down in too much detail, but there's Facebook's Power Editor, which is basically a Facebook ads editor that has much more functionality than just, I guess, the in-browser functionality. So I went in there and set up an ad, and most importantly, with your targeting, I started targeting or asked Facebook to target the friends of people who already like your page and like marketing. And I think that equated to a potential audience of around 200,000 off the top of my head. I'm not looking at those numbers right now, which is a healthy audience to be targeting. So from there, throwing a bit of money at it, throwing a bit of dough, we actually let that budget run out over, I think it was 3 or 4 days now. And anyway, long story short, off the back of that, you've ended up with about 418 clicks, and this is off the paid version, just remember.
Yeah.
Which equates to about 6 cents per click, which I think in anyone's language these days is pretty cheap in terms of paid advertising.
So we've got other numbers, 14,000, nearly 14,500 people reached, 65 likes, 24 shares. The shares is where the power is, because all of a sudden you get that massive leverage of going onto other people's pages, yeah?
That's exactly right. So that sharing is really the viral part of it. Now, so the stats I've been reading out are the stats that Facebook ads reports give me.
Yeah, right.
When I go and look at your Google Analytics, we can actually then see what impact those other shares have had, because Google doesn't count those clicks. So you've actually, off the back of all up from that piece of content, people sharing it, us boosting it, you've ended up with about 900 visits to your website, which equates to about 3 cents per click.
Oh, man, how good's that? I love it when you read those numbers, Luke. Now, some of the learnings for listeners, let's just smash through some of them. From my point of view, as the creator of the content, I think a compelling headline works brilliantly every time. So my headline, 7 graphic design fails, and then in brackets, number 6 will have you scratching your head. There's a bit of curiosity factor there, which kind of, my intention was, how can people not click on it just to see, if anything, what number 6 is? I led with an interesting image. So I had 7 images, but I chose the image that I thought was most interesting. It put a smile on people's dial, because the idea of the Small Business Big Marketing Facebook page is to share the lighter side of marketing. So interesting headline, interesting image. I think just being a visual post, once I got people to the post, that there was lots of images. There were 7 images there. Each one was funny. There wasn't a lot of copy. Doesn't mean you shouldn't write blog posts with lots of copy, but in our attention-lacking world, a blog post like this does seem to get more engagement. I think the other thing, Lukey, and I'll hand it over to you in a minute, mate, is to say that I did write the blog post over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and paste the link onto Facebook, as opposed to sharing that content primarily directly to Facebook, which you want to get people back to your website. And the last one for me, Lukey, was that I curated that content. I didn't create that content from scratch. I went out to the big wide world that is the internet and found 7 examples, pulled them together into one blog post. That blog post, mate, took me, I reckon, 10 minutes to write.
Yep. And one of the things we haven't mentioned, Timbo, is that one piece of content that took you 10 minutes to write has been the most popular piece of content on your website this year.
Boom.
Now, and don't get me wrong here, there's different purposes for different types of content, but you think about the time that goes into creating a podcast, and I bet it takes you much longer than 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. 12, 13 minutes.
Obviously, there's a lot. You do get a truckload of people listening to your podcast, but that doesn't necessarily always convert into traffic.
Well, so we talked about this the other day too. Is like it's forced me now to look at ways to make my show notes, because the show notes of an episode are essentially a blog post that happens to have an audio file embedded into it. But I'm going to work harder now, or try and figure out ways of making those show notes more engaging than what I'm doing right now, is covering off what people are going to hear in an episode of this show, and I include a photo of my guest with their business logo as the image. And clearly that is not the most compelling thing I could be doing. So great learning for me going forward as well.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I think you've covered some of the really good points, Timo, and I might reiterate a few of them. But with this, you've hit the nail on the head. You've curated content, but instead of just going out and finding the content on another website and then posting a link to it on Facebook, you've taken a little bit more time to put that image into a blog post, comment on it, and then post it to Facebook. And that's the most important process there. And one of there's lots of examples of this recently with media sites that are basically just curating content. Upworthy is a really good example.
Don't go there, listeners. Highly addictive.
Well, I think you should go there because it actually will teach you how to write good headlines, intriguing headlines. Some people will call it clickbait, but it actually gets people from a social media site like Facebook to click on a headline and then go and look at another image or watch a video or read a blog post. And this is essentially what you're doing. You're taking an audience from Facebook, showing them something that's entertaining, intriguing. They probably want to, you've shown them one image that's kind of funny and intriguing. And with your headline, you've intimated that there's another 6 images. So that's kind of getting people to click across to your webpage.
And Lukey, so I think, Facebook hate this stuff, don't they? Because it actually gets people off Facebook onto your own site.
Yes, but then it probably also dangles a carrot to people like you, Timbo, and me that go, oh, gee, I'm getting a bit of traction here. I might throw some money at this. So I would certainly say that, I think Facebook doesn't mind this happening because they know that people are going to come back to Facebook anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, it is sugar. Facebook is the virtual version of sugar. We can't get enough of it. Hey, Lukey, love it, mate. I love getting under the hood with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and write another engaging blog post. I'm going to share it on Facebook, and I'm going to up your budget to $26. $26. All right, mate? See you next time.
Sounds good, mate.
Righto. Coming up, we are joined by Olympic gold medalist turned thriving small business owner Steven Bradbury. But first, a word about 2 businesses that can literally, and I mean literally, turbocharge your marketing. Now, you know by now that Net Registry can help you get your online marketing sorted. And one thing they do very well is build great websites. And who doesn't need a website? But what makes a great website? So in the last 2 episodes, I've shared 5 characteristics of websites that produce results for their owners. So if you haven't heard them, go back and listen to the last 2 episodes. Here's another 2 characteristics of great websites. Number 1, they include multimedia. Video, audio, words, photos, illustrations, infographics. Just present your information in a multitude of different ways because people consume information differently. Another characteristic of a great website, they have a personal About Us page. And this is a big one in particular for service-based businesses. They have an About Us page that introduces the team in a human-friendly, engaging way. So they're 2 characteristics. That adds to the other 5 I've shared in the last 2 episodes. I'll build up a little slide deck. Once I've shared all the characteristics of a high-performing website, there's a few more to come, thanks to Net Registry. I will create a little slide deck and post it on the blog over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. So, if your website is underperforming, if it's not ticking those boxes, then head over to netregistry.com.au or give them a buzz, 1300 638 734, and tell them Timbo sent you. And as you know, the Small Business Big Marketing Show is also brought to you by 99 Designs, your one-stop shop for anything graphic design related. So this week I did host a webinar with their lead designer, Alex Whitco, in which we revealed together how to nail your creative brief when briefing your graphic designer. For anything, for a brochure, a logo, a car wrap, a book cover, whatever it is. We had over 300 people register for that webinar and there was some great discussion. I'll place a link in the show notes to the recording of that webinar, so look out for that over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and look for episode 234. And now, back to the show. Righto, let's get stuck into today's guest, and it is a gold medal Olympian. I love saying that. Don't get to say that very often on the show, although I have had Michael Klim on the show in the first year. About 6 years ago, I had Klimmy on. Today's guest is speed skater Steven Bradbury, who created history in Salt Lake City when he became the first Australian to win a Winter Olympic gold medal. His remarkable and unlikely victory was achieved after a spectacular final lap where he took out all four rivals who crashed. And Steven came through with his arms in the air in disbelief as he crossed the finish line to take the gold. He's now a four-time Olympian. His gold medal, he says, was not entirely as fortuitous as many would believe. In fact, he knew his limitations and also the unpredictable nature of short-track ice skating. So this is a great story. I love he talks about so many things in this, from motivational stuff to just plain right marketing stuff and business stuff, because he's now got a thriving small business himself. I think you're going to love this interview. The question is questionable, but I started off by asking Steve, Olympic gold medalist, what's the biggest animal he could knock out with one punch?
The biggest animal I could knock out with one punch. I don't think it'd be a real big one. Maybe a sheep.
Get out. Mate, you're a tough guy. You're an Olympic gold medalist.
Oh, mate, us speed skaters, mate, we're all quads and glutes. We don't have a lot on the upper body. Maybe if I kicked it, I could do a bigger one.
Hey, there you go. There you go. What would it be if you could kick it? A cow.
What sort of question is that, Tim? You got anything better than that today or what?
Mate, I haven't. I'm sorry. I am absolutely.
Okay, we'll finish up then. See you, mate.
Now, Steve, let's get serious here, mate. There's a saying named after you, which goes, it's doing a Bradbury. In Australia, most people have heard of it. Some of the overseas listeners might not have. What is doing a Bradbury?
Yeah, mate, I love it. Every time somebody uses that saying, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I'm proud of it. It gets used these days in political, financial, sporting circles. Not so long ago, it was on the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald to describe the Aussie dollar when it was through the roof. As in, there was a little cartoon, and the yen and the euro and the US dollar had all crashed. But no matter what we could do in Australia, our dollar simply wouldn't fall. It was doing a Bradbury. Obviously, since then, it has fallen over as well. But, recently doing a Bradbury was actually admitted into the Macquarie Dictionary. The great Australian Olympic historian, his name's Harry Gordon. He passed away about 3 months ago, unfortunately. But just before he passed away, he had doing a Bradbury put into the Macquarie Dictionary. So hopefully when I'm not around, they'll still be saying it.
How good is that, mate? You're in the dictionary.
Yeah, I think I think there's a quote that I wrote that sort of sums up doing a Bradbury, and I think it means that when your moment to shine presents itself, will you be in position and prepared to be the next to do a Bradbury?
Have you ever come across, well, particularly people in business, but in life generally, that have done a Bradbury?
Well, I had somebody tell me that 1 in 5 people in Australia claim to have done a Bradbury at some point in their life, whether it's through a lucky victory in the footy with their local footy team or some other area of their life. And yeah, I hear it all the time. You know, people that have put themselves in position and all their competition has failed.
Interesting. That's great. I mean, you not only have got a gold medal, you got a listing in the Macquarie Dictionary, mate. So, Steve, does it annoy you when people tell you that you only won an Olympic gold because you were lucky?
Mate, I'm the first person to admit I was incredibly lucky to win that. I'm probably the luckiest Olympic gold medalist in history. But that doesn't change the fact that I had to be in position to give myself a chance to win. I competed at 4 Olympics, trained 5 hours a day, 6 days a week for 12 years, and that's not lucky.
Mm.
When you work hard enough for long enough at something, eventually you start to make your own luck. And, you know, one of the things that I talk about when I do my presentations around the world these days is that people with a negative mindset, they often don't realise that. And occasionally people have said to me, "Geez, you're lucky, mate." But no, it doesn't annoy me because they're often the same people that are sitting at home, not really doing a lot. In Australia, some of the overseas listeners might not have heard of this one, but in Australia, it kind of leads into the tall poppy syndrome. And I don't like that. It's too prevalent. And if you've succeeded in something occasionally, sometimes people just want to knock you down, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they sure do, mate. I think you're being a bit humble there too, Steve, because you were impaled on a skate in 1994. You lost 4 litres of blood and had 111 stitches, and then you broke your neck in 2000, and then you come back 2 years later and claim the gold. There's a whole lot of small business owners listening. I interviewed a lady last week who lost everything in her business and rose from the ashes, and is now she's the second biggest seller on this website called Etsy. It's a craft website. She's making $80,000 a month, right?
Fantastic.
She did a Bradbury. Is there a time when someone should just give up?
I don't think so. I think, giving up should never be an option. I think sometimes there's a time for reinvention. If you need to be willing to change and be adaptable in today's fast-paced, changing internet world, because if you're not, you can get left behind. Whether you're looking at changing what you're doing or just pushing the passion of what you're doing a little bit further. And that's often where people hit some difficult times. If their head's not quite in it, if their heart's not quite in it as much as what it should be, then that's when they give up. But really, that's the time where you need to believe in yourself.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Steve, where you talk about reinvention versus giving up. I mean, there'll be business owners here that go, well, man, you got to give up at some point. I mean, how much debt, for example, do you go into? But I don't see enough business owners who are under the pump reinvent themselves. And reinventing yourself may just be just a slight tweak in the way you do something, a slight pivot.
Yes, it's not completely changing your whole business model, is it?
No, I don't reckon it is.
It's just coming up with a couple of new ideas or putting some things on your to-do list, which you should have. You don't have a to-do list, you should start writing one, putting a couple of those things into practice instead of leaving them on the to-do list.
Do you love the to-do list, do you?
I do, mate, yeah, and I don't go back to it all the time.
Right.
But, when I'm at a point where I'm thinking, geez, I haven't got much on today, what should I do? That's when I try and force myself to head back to my to-do list and rip into it.
Stevie, you're one of these blokes, and you don't have to come clean, but I'd love you to. You're one of these blokes who may do something, achieve something in the day, and then go, oh, geez, that wasn't on my to-do list. So you write it down on the to-do list and then cross it off immediately?
No, I've never actually done that one. My stuff, I do spontaneously do a lot of things, and
right.
And my wife will tell me something that I need to get done, and I won't do it, but I'll have done 3 other things, and I think it's fantastic, but she won't.
Yeah. Welcome to marriage. Have a nice day. By the way, yes, I am one of those blokes who writes things on the to-do list after they've been done. But anyway, enough. It's not about me. Now, mate, you won Olympic gold in 2002. Well, a belated well done from me. 12 years ago, that was. And now in 2015, you're one of Australia's best and probably busiest motivational speakers. I came across you at a conference a couple of weeks ago that we were both speaking at. Did you ever imagine you'd have a career as a motivational speaker?
I didn't even know that it was a career option. I suppose for me, the term motivational speaker, that's what I do now, but I still don't really like the term that much. It sort of comes off as un-Australian. Now, personally, I prefer to call myself a real-life speaker, but nobody knows what that is. So, yeah, it stemmed after winning the Olympic gold medal. Obviously, I had a telephone call. I recall it from my agent, and I couldn't believe that I even had an agent. I was a speed skater from Brisbane, which isn't exactly the centre of the speed skating universe.
Not the coldest place on earth, mate.
Yeah, so why on earth would I need an agent? But anyway, after winning the gold, a lot of stuff happened, and Rob, my agent at the time, gives me a call and says, Steve, they've asked you to come and speak at the annual Retrovision conference. Back then, they were a large television and electrical chain in Australia.
Yep.
The conference was in Adelaide, and they said, and they'll pay you $5,000.
Hello.
I said, Rob, are you serious? $5,000? That's what I make in a year. He said, yep, and they want you to speak for 45 minutes. And I said, what, in a row?
Ka-ching!
So that was where it started, and a couple of years later I realised that, hang on a minute, this could be a career option. I enjoy it. What would happen if I started to get really good at it? And so I started to put a team together, and even nowadays I work with a comedian and a professional speechwriter, and I've actually spoken at closing on 800 gigs in 15 countries. I still love it. If you want to have a look, check me out at stephenbradbury.com.
Oh, here we go. Self-promotion's happening already. Mate, that is extraordinary. And I love your immediate reaction, which is, oh, well, I better put a team together, which I'm guessing is kind of like a high-performing sports person's approach to getting stuff done. Because I know as small business owners, sometimes we just can't put a team together because, budgets, limited resources, limited time stop us. But your reaction was put a team together. And very interestingly, so am I right in saying you would be operating off a very low base? Like, what was that first talk for Retrovision like? Were you stumbling over your words?
I wasn't stumbling over my words. I was prepared, but I was glued to the lectern. I had my notes written out in 20 font, word for word, so the whole 45 minutes, every word was written out, and I had sections in there that said, read slow here, read fast here, pause here. I put together a plan of attack, and it went pretty well, and I actually still use the testimonial that I got from that client in my testimonials these days as the first gig that I ever did. But, there's one thing you mentioned there prior to that question, Tim, that struck a chord with me. You mentioned how a lot of business owners won't put their team together because they haven't got enough time, it's too expensive, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Excuses.
Exactly. It's never too expensive, and you never don't have enough time to put the right people together. Often everybody's got a solid network of people that have got skill sets within areas that we don't, and it's just a matter of utilising the people within your network skill sets. And, often those people are your friends and they won't charge you anything.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of reaching out. It's very difficult. Well, actually, I think it's impossible in today's world to be a jack of all trades. That guy's been dead for a long time. You've got to be an expert in your particular roles and then get other people to help you do the things that you're not an expert at.
Yeah, that's great advice. You went and sought a speechwriter's an obvious person to seek out. You sought out a comedian. I too had a stand-up comedian work with me for the last 12 months, crafting.
I saw you present, Tim. I saw some of that in there, mate. It was pretty good.
Oh, thank you very much, Steve. You're the one. Mate, what did you get from working with a comedian?
Probably a combination of things. Through spending time on stage and through working with the comedian, I developed pausing and timing. And when I first started doing it, I paused because I couldn't remember the next line. And then people came up to me afterwards and they said, gee, your pauses are good, Steve. And I was like, oh, really? They're like, yeah, they make it so much more powerful, those pauses that you use. And it allows me a little bit of time to think about what you've just said and relate it to something that's happening in my life. And I was like, oh, really?
Mate, that's funny.
I continued on with that, and it's about using them but not overusing them.
Yeah.
And the other thing that the comedian was able to help me with was to, in my presentations, I hang a bit of crap on some other athletes and keep it entertaining and fun. But the one thing that he was pushing was, it's good to make a joke about somebody, but you've got to build them up first, or you've got to build them up afterwards. You can't just hang a bit of crap on someone, and especially someone that's well known in the public eye. And even though I've won a gold medal, I don't want to get up there on stage and get an article in the paper or something saying that I've given it to Ian Thorpe because he's gay or something like that. It all needs to be in context, and he was able to help me along some of that stuff.
That's great advice. Both the pauses and building someone up before you shoot them down, or as we say in Australia, take the piss. You do that throughout your keynote. Did you approach those athletes beforehand and tell them what you were doing and how you were referring to them, or did you let them find out third hand?
No, I've mentioned it to a couple of them that I know, and I think 99% of people, especially high-profile people, they don't mind somebody having a bit of a dig at them because they understand that it's all tongue-in-cheek and everything is just a little bit too politically correct these days all the time, isn't it?
Mate, can I just say I totally agree. And even that question at the start of this chat, what's the biggest animal you think you could knock out with one punch? I ummed and ahed over that because I don't know you well enough. I saw 15 minutes of your keynote a couple of weeks ago, and I thought this bloke's got a sense of humour, but you just don't know. And you do have to pick your mark, don't you? But you also have to take a risk.
That's right, I did a one-liner at the West Coast Eagles season launch about 4 years ago in Perth. I talked all about my training, about how I trained 5 hours a day, 6 days a week for 12 years, and the only other bloke in Australia who spent almost as much time on the ice as me is Ben Cousins.
How'd that go down?
Nah, not very well.
No.
There was about 1,000 people and they all booed, and I talked to a couple of people over there in Perth before I did it, and since then I've done it at other gigs around the country, and it goes down a treat. But it was the wrong mark and the wrong audience, and it didn't go down that well. So you've definitely got to pick your target.
Yeah, well, good on you for, having the courage to try something new. Now, mate...
But, you've got to take a risk too, don't you?
Absolutely, because if you don't, you are the same as everyone else, because most people aren't taking a risk, and I call it, you become wallpaper. You become vanilla. You don't get noticed. So there's that. You've just got to find the balance, don't you? Mate, what's the main message when you speak? Is there something you want your audience to walk away with?
There is, yeah. There's I like it that I'm able to entertain an audience and get a few laughs and have some fun. But the main message of my presentation is that passion, persistence, and teamwork leads to success. And we've already mentioned it a little bit, but teamwork is not optional in today's world. You need to surround yourself with people that are experts in their chosen field, so they can help you if you need it. In my skating career, I had my teammates, physio, equipment manager, my coach, my parents. If I was still in the sport nowadays, my team would need to be way bigger, because everything's so much more specialised than what it was. And, that was only a decade ago. So things are evolving quickly. But without those people in my team, I simply wouldn't have won the gold medal. And sometimes for me, the people around me provided those 1%ers that I wasn't smart enough to go out and hunt for myself. And today I try and learn from that, because I've got hindsight working in my favour. Unfortunately, I'm not a speed skater anymore, but I'm in business. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to try and find solutions to problems for people that can help me solve them, whether it's something to do with my website or whatever it is within my business, rather than just waiting for it to land in my lap, because that generally won't happen. And it's rewarding finding solutions, getting answers, and using my team and building my team.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and how important is that, mate? We don't do that enough. And as you said before, encouraging small business owners to get out there and surround themselves with what I'd call A players.
Yeah, I like that term, A players. And, for my message, the question you asked there before, the experiences that I have, when I'm on stage, I'm often able to use those experiences, and people are able to relate them to things that are happening in their life. I once had a CEO of a large organisation that I presented for a couple of days ago, and he rang me up a couple of days later and he said, Steve, I've just had Peter, my second in charge, hand me his resignation.
Oops.
He said that after listening to my presentation, he realised that he was going through the motions and it was time for him to leave and do what he was passionate about. He was with him for 17 years. He was his go-to guy, and he was really going to miss him. And he's telling me all this on the phone, and I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, what have I done? Do I need to go and get a lawyer? And the CEO, he then says, Steve, yesterday was definitely not the result that I was hoping for with what's happened since from your presentation. But Peter is now moving on to do what he loves, and he's forced my hand to go out and find a new 2IC, which I knew I was going to have to do in the not-too-distant future anyway. So I've just called you up to say thanks. And I was on the other end of the phone, and I said, okay, No worries. See you later.
No lawyer required.
No. Funny how things turn out, isn't it?
Well, how things turn out, and it's an entire another discussion, but I'm sure it's amazing. You must look back and reflect on the things that have happened. Not only has an entire industry of speaking opened up to you, but the amazing impact that you have been able to have on other people. And I often look at that. I look at people in the public eye and think about, they would never have realised the impact they're going to have on people they'll never meet, on the role modelling that they are now responsible for, whether they like it or not, and the responsibility that comes with that. Does that responsibility weigh heavily for you? Do you wish it wasn't there? Do you love it?
I've never been a fan of the word responsibility. I don't know why. Maybe you should speak to my mum about that.
Come on, grow up, mate.
It probably comes back a little bit to what we spoke about before, about everything being too politically correct these days as well. But no, I don't feel the responsibility at all, Tim, and I like to think that through what I do on stage that I'm able to provide some people some light bulb moments. And I'm thinking back now to when I first started doing the speaking. I'd won the gold medal, and people said to me all the time, "Oh, so what are you going to do now, Steve?" And I said, well, I've gotten into this motivational speaking thing, and I'm going all right at it, and I'm enjoying it. And they said, yeah, well, that's all right for a while, but that's not going to last long. What are you going to do after that? And at first, I believed that was what would happen, and then I started to hear about these things called speakers bureaus.
Oh, yes.
And I started knocking on their doors and looking at their websites, and I was like, well, these people, that's what they do. They promote speakers and entertainers and comedians and bands and whatever else. And I was like, well, geez, I wonder if they'd be willing to promote me. So I started knocking on their doors, and one of the first meetings I had was with a guy by the name of Ron Tacky, and he was a extremely successful speaker, and he ran a successful speakers bureau as well. And he's passed away now, but he was an American bloke, and he had this really, really loud, full-on American accent, and I had heaps of questions for him, and he was a great talker, obviously. He did most of the talking, I did all the listening, and I had a lot of questions, but at the same time, I really only had one question for him, and I saved it till right at the end of the meeting, and I said, Ron, do you think I could make a career as a speaker? And he paused for a bit, he looked at me and he said, Steve, if you really, truly want to do this, you can do it for the rest of your life. That was the light bulb moment for me. And from there, I thought, well, all these other people that are telling me that it's going to run out, they haven't been a speaker. They don't run a speakers bureau. What do they know? So I'm going to go with my light bulb moment. And now we're 13 years down the track, and I'm still going with it.
Good on you, mate. And, those light bulb moments, otherwise called epiphanies, I love them. I wish I had more of them. I wonder how often people actually trust them or are ready for them or acknowledge them, because there is a bit of magic in them, isn't there, where someone says something, you're not ready for it, but it just touches you somewhere deep inside, and you actually listen to it, and in listening to it, you succeed.
Yeah, well, it's kind of going with your gut, isn't it?
Exactly.
And, it's not going to work every time you go with your gut. Sometimes you're going to fall flat in your face, but if you never go with your gut, then you're probably just going to be going through the motions a little bit.
I saw somewhere recently where, might have been a Facebook post, so definitely true, that there is an extraordinary amount of nerve endings in your gut, which lead to that concept of the gut feeling. And there
was a few more nerve endings in my gut than there was when I was skating.
Why do you say that?
Because it's a little bigger.
You put on a few kg, have you, Steve?
Yeah, not too many. I haven't put on as many as Jeff Hugel did there for a while, but I'm going all right.
Well, you're probably balanced up. I mean, your body shape, as you said before, massive glutes and quads, and now you might have done a bit of work on the upper body. So you're a more balanced human being these days.
Yeah, mate. You should see speed skaters in today's world. There's the fastest guy in the world, the young Korean kid. His name's Kwak Yoon Gi, and he weighs a grand total of 54 kilograms. And he's just, I reckon, 35 of those are quads and glutes. And when he's wearing his T-shirt, it looks like it's still hanging on the clothesline, I tell you.
He's all legs.
Yep.
I saw one of the cyclists, the Olympic cyclists, Kathy Watt.
Kathy Watt, yeah, she won the road gold in 96, I think, in Atlanta.
Yeah, I just remember seeing her glutes and going, my God, they are, and she talked a lot about, having to balance it off with the upper body work, which as a cyclist you don't want to do because you don't want to be too heavy. But conversation for another time, mate. I want to finish up, Steve, because you are sharing some absolute gold, and I know that there'll be listeners itching to get out there and start implementing. You've done over, I think you said 800 presentations in 15 countries. You're still enjoying it. What keeps you coming back for more?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, mate. An easy one to answer, though.
Yeah.
Adrenaline.
Yeah, adrenaline junkie, hey?
I used to get adrenaline competing at the Olympics, mate. Now I get it on stage, and they pay me for it.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes when I'm speaking, I just get locked on maybe half a dozen people in the audience because they're the ones that are really eyeballing you, and you end up eyeballing them. I'm getting them fired up. They're getting me fired up on the stage. And adrenaline, it's addictive. That stuff is fuel for your soul. And if you believe in yourself that you can be the best in the world, well, it just might happen.
Love it, buddy. Love it. That's inspiring stuff. Steve, I cracked the pun earlier. I didn't realise I'd done it, but thanks for sharing some marketing GOLD.
No worries, Tim. Thanks for having us along, mate. And if you're interested in more on me, StevenBradbury.com.
Righto, team. What about that? I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did bringing it to you. And I do love Elton John's I'm Still Standing. Hey, I want to share my top 4 learnings from that chat with Olympic gold medalist Steven Bradbury, thanks to the very good folk at Net Registry and 99 Designs. Number 1, never give up. If you are doing it tough, if something's just not working for you, don't give up. Pivot, take a little turn, left, right, up, down, I don't know. But keep testing, keep trying things in your marketing and your business. Don't give up. Number 2, surround yourself with A players. I like this. Steve knows he can't do it all himself. He gets his speaking coach, he gets his stand-up comedian, he gets other people to do the stuff he can't. And that's one of the reasons I started the Small Business Big Marketing Forum. You might not be able to surround yourself with an A-player marketing team right now, but boy, get inside the forum and you are surrounded by motivated small business owners who are there to help and support each other. You want to join? Head over to crankmymarketing.com. Number 3, believe in yourself. As Rowdy McLean in a previous episode said, as Keith Abraham in a previous episode said, I reckon every guest I've had on this show, whether they said it overtly or covertly, would support this notion of believing in yourself. Remember, guys, you don't have to be the best in the world. You just have to be the best in your client's world, in your prospect's world. And number 4, don't tire of what you're good at. I see a lot in marketing where business owners and marketers change direction because they're tired of the brochure or the website or the headline or the strategy that they're using. But the reality is most people in your business won't have seen it. Steve is year after year continuing to tell his wonderful story and make a business out of it. He's not changing. He's just doing what he does best, and I encourage you not to tire of what you're good at. I'd love to hear what you got from that interview, what your big takeout was, your big learning. If you want to join the forum, get in there. We talk about each episode over at crankmymarketing.com, or you can leave a note in the show notes for episode 234 over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. Righto, time for the motivational marketing quote of the week. It is from none other than the late American comedian Milton Berle. You probably haven't heard of him, but he's one of the most famous guys on early American TV. And he said once, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. Don't you love that? If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. You see, there's opportunities everywhere if you're prepared to look. Not always obvious, but they are there. So stay alert, look out for them, and have the courage to recognise an opportunity when it taps you on the shoulder. Thanks, Milton, for that marketing quote of the week. It's that time of the episode. Nearly there. Not quite. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of Australia's #1 marketing show, then you are going to love what I have coming up for you next week, where I'm joined by the second biggest seller on the e-commerce website, Etsy. And boy, does she share some marketing GOLD. To never miss a second, simply subscribe over at iTunes or on your favourite podcast app. Be sure to hit me up on Twitter. @Timbo Reid is my handle. That's Timbo and then REID. To book me to speak at a conference, head over to timreid.com.au. I'd love to come and speak at your conference, or maybe you're part of a chamber of commerce or some kind of association that needs a speaker every now and then. That's what I do. If you want to pay it forward, then go ahead and tell another motivated small business owner just like yourself. They're going to love you forever if you do. And be sure to use 99designs.com/SBBM for all your design needs and Net Registry to get your online marketing sorted. A big thank you to all those who've left a review on iTunes or a comment in the show notes. Love reading them. And a special thanks to my forum members. Love you guys. Keep motivated. Stay motivated. You inspire me, that's for sure. Until next week, I'm Timbo Reid. You're a motivated small business owner, and you've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show. May your marketing be the best marketing. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reid. Want more marketing goodness? Then visit smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.